Well, hello, my inky friends. This is Cindy Lynn with My Inky Fingers. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I'm going to show you how I store and mail my cards. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to show you a really cool tip on how to make sure if your envelopes get wet, your text doesn't smear or pool. Now, this is how I store my cards. I just have an acrylic bin from the Dollarama in Canada. You can probably find these on Amazon. They are a little bit more expensive, but if you have a dollar store or a Target near you, you can grab a bin there. And I actually cut out the dividers on my Cricut. I will link the link to that in case you have a Cricut. I'll link that on my blog, and then I laminate them. So what I'm going to show you here is anytime I store a card, they go in those clear envelopes because it protects them from getting dog-eared or bent or whatnot. And if you have multiples of one, I can fit sometimes 5 or 6 cards in one of those envelopes, which I absolutely love. So categorized and nice and stored. Now, when I make my envelopes, of course I do make my envelopes, I do use the Stampin' Up! Punch board. Now the Stampin' Up! Punch board is made by We Are Memory Keepers, so I will link that one down below for you because we don't carry the actual Stampin' Up! Version anymore. But today I'm going to show you really quick how I make an envelope for a A2 size card. Now as you can see here, this is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card, so we need to cut our cardstock to 8 by 8. Now don't worry, the envelope will always be about 1/4 inch bigger on both sides than your card. So don't worry about trying to make a bigger envelope to fit your card. Always choose the size on the punch board that is the authentic size of your card. So all I did is I pulled out some of the Lily impression paper from the Celebration. I love using this paper because it is double-sided, so when they open the flap of the envelope, there's an extra print inside. So as you can see, I just kind of matched them to my cards, and I'm just showing you, you can do the printed side or the solid side. Now, this is important. Once you cut out your 8 by 8, that's a lot of paper off of your designer series paper. But the other pieces, you could have made a card with those, use those as your mats, or use them to cut out your flowers or die cuts. And then you can match your envelope to your card as well. I don't think that far ahead. I match my envelopes after I've made the card. But nevertheless, again, a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch envelope. We're going to need an 8 by 8 paper. Now, it's very important. It says right on the punch board where you're going to make your first score. And this particular one said 3 1/2. So I line it up at the 3 1/2 inch mark, and then I just make my score. And then I'm going to punch that at the top, and it's going to create the envelope shape. Now, you never measure again. All you do from now on each side is line up your score with that little piece that sticks out from underneath where the punch is. So you just line it up here, right there, and then you score it along the line all the way underneath the punch, and then you punch it. And you repeat that 3 times. So this is the last time, lining it up with that score, scoring it with the score tool that comes with your punch board. And now I've got 4 score lines and 4 of the little punch thingies that shape your envelope, right? Now I am going to stick that there in the opposite side of where we punched, because that's going to round my corners. So you don't even need a corner rounder or any other tools. This is all you need to make your envelopes. And it's so easy and quick. And there's plenty of other things you can make with envelope punch boards too. And I'll be sure to make videos to show you guys that down the road. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this and line it up. And I'm being mindful of how the paper looks when the top flap is open. So I want it to look that way. So now what you're going to want to do is pull out your tear and tape or your double-sided adhesive, any one you have. You're going to score all of your sides, just burnish those all down so they're nice and flat. And then I'm going to show you exactly where to place your tear and tape. And I use tear and tape because I want this envelope to stand up through the mail, right? So when you fold in your left and right side, on the bottom part of your envelope, on those 2 triangular flaps you flipped inside, that's where your tear and tape is going to go. So as you can see, I'm going to peel those off, and then when I flip up the bottom part of my envelope, those will be completely hidden. You'll never know they're there. And it's nice and tacky, so again, it's going to hold up through the mail. Now, on the top part of the envelope where you're going to flip it down to close it, that's where I'm going to put my tear and tape. Now, you do want to use a nice thin one here. You don't want it too thick because you don't want the tape to touch the card when you fold that flap over. So if you have super thick or super wide, I think, yeah, not thick, wide, you don't want it to be too wide. So if it's really wide, make sure you trim that down so it's nice and narrow. So as you can see, that envelope slips in there perfectly. There's a 1/4 inch give on each of the two sides of the envelope when it goes inside. Now here's my tip. These Amazon Prime bags that you get in the mail, or any bubble envelope or bubble wrap or whatnot, the Amazon Prime ones are perfect because they're nice and thin. I cut them down to the exact same size as an A2 size card, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I put that on the top of my card, and check that out. That just fits in there so perfect. And honestly, so many times we're paying for our cards to be over a 1/4 inch anyway. So throw that in there, protect your cards. Now, Darlene was gracious enough to let me use her address. So I'm going to show you now, when you've used printed or patterned paper, I like to print my labels, and I will link these down below for you guys, and you can use Avery Print to print those. But I like to print them because personally my penmanship sucks, and the way that I print these is I center everything. And as you can see, the address normally goes very narrow towards the bottom of that sticker. So it gives me a spot to just kind of add a little bit of something. So I'm just going to add this little stamp, and I matched it to the envelope and the card, and I used Gorgeous Grape. So it just kind of adds a little bit of an extra personal touch. Now, what I'm going to do is to kind of fake that I wrote this, and now Darlene, you'll know I didn't write this, but I'm going to take a sparkle pen and I'm just going to trace over top of the letters, and I'm going to be mindful to not be perfect, because if it looks absolutely perfect, then I can't maybe fool the fact that I wrote it, right? So you can print it in very light gray, and then take a marker and you can write over top of it, and it'll make it look like you wrote the whole thing, right? So I print my return envelope or my return label as well, and those go on the back. So there's just a whole bunch of cards I whipped up there with this designer series paper, or envelope, sorry, with this designer series paper. And now I'm just testing to make sure that that's dry, because this is your super cool tip. This stuff is Tim Holtz Distress Glaze, and I just use that little tool and I cover everywhere that there's printing or writing, because if this envelope gets wet, that is going to 100% protect it. Don't put this over top of your stamps, because then they can't cancel them off and your card will come back to you. But there you have it. That's how I store my cards, and that's how I mail them to keep them as safe as I possibly can. Let me know how you store your cards and how you mail them in the comments below. And until I see you again, take care and happy stamping.